Representatives from the City Manager Association, and they're going to introduce themselves. And then I also have a representative from the Oklahoma Municipal League, Diane Pettifor, and she's also going to be answering some questions about the different forms of government and the procedure that we need to take if we were to go that direction. First of all, I want to introduce some people or recognize some people. Up here with me is our Vice Mayor, Greg Anderson, and I also have some other council members out there. If you'll just stand up, our council members, I have Roger Barton, James Moody, Donald Berryhill, Gene Dobson. Did I miss anybody? Also, we have other council members that are not here or that weren't able to attend was Jim Self and Frank Davis. Floyd Smith. Oh, Floyd, I saw him back there. There's Floyd, back in the back. Sorry, Floyd. Also, to run a government, there's a lot of other people involved, and I just want to recognize some really hard workers. We have our city clerk, Donna Heisel, our city attorney, Kay Wall, our city judge, Teresa Pratt, and also I want to recognize our school superintendent, Jeanette Smith, and thank you for letting us use your facility tonight. Is there anyone that I've missed? Okay, again, thank you all for coming out, and I want to introduce, first let me just put a little of the ground rules. Basically, we're going to be, tonight is about education. It's about learning what our different forms of governments are, what is our option, is it what's right for Eufaula or not. This is not a debate session. We just want to get information, and that's what this is about. Everyone has a right to vote, and we are taking this to a vote, but you need to make sure that you have the right information, and that's what we're trying to provide for you tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Mike Nunley, who is the city manager of Manfort, and he's going to introduce the people that are with him, and then we'll start the questions and answers.
Thank you for having us here. We've done this a few times. We're city managers and mayors and former mayors, and we go to cities, no charge to the cities, just to help them with information on different types of governments and how they work. With me tonight, Pam Polk. She's the city manager in Collinsville. Greg Buckley. He's the City Manager Association president right now. He's in transition from one job to another. Brian McDougall, who's with the city of Shawnee as their city manager. As the mayor said, I'm with the city of Manford. And then Jimmy Trammell, he's the mayor of Pryor. Pam's been the city clerk for 6 years and the city manager for 12. Jimmy's been a strong mayor Pryor for 10 years. Mr. Buckley was 13 years assistant manager, 9 years as city manager. Brian McDougall was 12 years as a city planner and 12 years as city manager. I was 4 years as a trustee and a mayor, and then 14 years as a city manager administrator. So altogether, we bring about 96 years of municipal experience out of just the 5 of us. So we hope that will help you in understanding the change that the board is looking at. It will still be 100% the decision of the citizens that live inside the city limits. And that's the way it works. So Diane Pettifor is with OML Municipal League. She's one of their legal staff attorneys, been there 28 years. She's seen everything in cities come and go and change and everything else. So we put on this little dog and pony show 2 or 3 times for changing the form. We did it at Catoosa, and then this is with an Altus a while back. Altus just changed. Catoosa changed about 4 years ago. Diane's been in municipal business a long time, so she has seen different things come and go. I think she'll explain to you the process from here on as far as balloting. There are a couple of types of council manager forms of government. There's There's a home rule charter and there's statutory, and she'll go over that with you.
I appreciate being able to be here. Can you all hear me okay? I can't really see, so. Mayor had asked me to kind of give an overview about what forms of government mean and some of the comparisons, particularly of the form of government you have now and the council manager form of government, as just sort of setting the stage for going into a more thorough examination of the two forms and comparing them. When you're talking about forms of government, you're really talking about the different options that we have in Oklahoma for municipal government, really in distributing the powers and the duties and the responsibilities among the elected officials and other officials of your municipal government. And they tend to center, not solely, but the primary ways that the differences occur are in asking a few questions. One is, who's the administrative head of the city? Who's the CEO? Who has responsibility for the day-to-day management of your city or the town as far as one of the forms of government? The second question would be, who has primary control over personnel and other similar appointments? And finally, which positions are filled by election by the people? So we'll kind of look at that real quickly so we can get to your questions. You need to know that there are 4 statutory forms of government in Oklahoma. The state statutes give an option for cities and towns to choose among 4 different forms of government. By far the biggest number of municipalities in Oklahoma are the town form of government, and they have to have a population of 1,000 to even be a city. So many of our smaller communities have no choice but to be the town form of government, and that really would be smaller, I think, than your city would want to consider. The aldermanic form of government, which is the form of government you have now, there are roughly 40 cities in Oklahoma that operate under that form of government. The council manager form of government operating under the statutory form is about 34 cities operating under that form of government, and then 4 operate under the strong mayor form. There's also another option provided by the Oklahoma Constitution, and that is to adopt a home rule charter. And that means that you can make up your own form of government. That's not necessarily set out in the statutes. Many of those are based to a large extent on the council manager form, but not exclusively. So you have that mix of forms of government in Oklahoma, and it's very much a local choice as to what best suits your community and your needs now and how you see your needs in the future. So in looking at the aldermanic form and the council manager form, kind of as a comparison under those questions, who's the CEO, who's the administrative head of the city, and the form of government you have now is the mayor. Mayor is elected directly by the people and does have that day-to-day responsibility for managing the city. Under the council manager form of government, it's a city manager who is hired by the council to be able to bring some background and experience to managing a city. And that also includes having the direct responsibility for managing the city, which leads to the second question, who's in charge of personnel? Under the form of government you have now, the aldermanic form, it's the mayor who is in charge of personnel. Under the council manager form, and this is a hallmark of the council manager form of government, it's the city manager who has the primary control for personnel. Those 2 questions are somewhat joined, but they're a very important piece of why some cities consider one form over another. The third question then is, what are some of the changes or differences in the duties as to how people are chosen for these duties through election by the people? Under the aldermanic form of government, the mayor is elected directly at large as mayor to be not only the ceremonial head of the city, but also the administrative head of the city. Under the council manager form of government, and also under the aldermanic form, you elect the clerk treasurer, the clerk and treasurer unless the people have voted to make that an appointed position. I'm neglected to ask you, is that the case here? Do you elect the clerk and treasurer?
Yes,
Elect the clerk and treasurer. The clerk and treasurer are elected. The marshal, who usually has the police chief's duties, and the street commissioner. Those are all elected positions under the automatic form of government. Under the council manager form of government, the mayor is elected from among the members of the council, so it's not elected directly by the people, but is one of the members of the council and is elected as mayor to be the ceremonial head of the city by the other members of the council. The clerk is an appointed position and is not elected. The treasurer is appointed by the council, and I note that in Eufaula you combined the two. So that would have to be addressed when you would go to the vote of the people and determine if you choose the council manager form of government. The marshal / police chief and street commissioner are department heads. All department heads are appointed by the city manager. So those are some of the main differences between the two. The effect when you look at the duties of the mayor now, or some of the prerogatives of the mayor under the form of government you have now, the mayor cannot vote except to break a tie, but the mayor does have veto power. Under the council manager form of government, the mayor has no veto power, but can vote on all measures. As far as the council's duties and how those might be changed, currently under the aldermanic form of government, although the mayor has the authority and prerogative to name department heads, that's subject to approval by the council. Also, for personnel who feel they've been subject to discipline or termination, they do have a right of an appeal to the council. Under the council manager form of government, there is no involvement by the mayor and council in personnel. That is solely the prerogative of the city manager. And so there would be no appeal, there would be no approval by the council of the manager's choices of department heads. Those are some of the main differences. What works best for any one community is up to that community. As Mike Nunley pointed out, there have been a number of cities and towns that have looked at changing the form of government. Some of them have done it because of their own local needs and their analysis of what they need for the future. Some have not, because they didn't want to give up certain parts of what they had under the form of government that they're operating under. One option, for any city that has at least 2,000 population, is to adopt a home rule charter. And under the home rule charter, as I said, you can kind of make up your own form of government. And in fact, there was a city not long ago who decided to kind of take parts of each of the aldermanic and the council manager form through the charter, set up their own form of government. Keep the parts they wanted out of the aldermanic form, but also to adopt a council manager form of government. There are other cities that have chosen not to make that change because they did not see that they gained much from making the change. So it's very much a local choice. Some aldermanic cities have, to help the mayor, have hired an administrator. They usually call them administrator. Sometimes they actually call them the city manager. But they're really it's an employment position that does much of the day-to-day operation of the city, even though the ultimate authority and prerogative lies with the mayor. So those are some variations on the theme that cities have used to try to tailor their form of government to the needs that they see for the city that they live in. I try to give you an overview of some of the differences and some of the reasons some cities and towns choose to adopt one form of government or the other. So I'll be happy to answer any questions when the time comes. Thank you.
Okay. The first question is about the contract. And there were two questions. Can a contract with a city manager specify that they only have one job instead of other interests? And can city managers' contracts be written with an annual evaluation?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll take that one simply because I have a contract with the City of Shawnee, Brian McDougal with the City of Shawnee, and my contract specifies that I do not have any outside work sources other than being the city manager of Shawnee. I have had them in the past where I taught or had some ability to do some sort of outside work, but I don't have the ability to do that. If I was going to do that, I'd have to have a change in contract, which the entire council would have to approve. And then the other half of the question was, is it tied to an evaluation? Absolutely. And in fact, a lot of times, in my experience, elected officials, if they've got a good manager, don't really necessarily want to go through that every year. It's in my contract that we do that every year on my anniversary day. I'm sure some of these others up here may have it differently, but I push that. I want to know. I want to know what the council, their objectives are, and I want to know that myself and my staff are achieving those objectives. So I use that as sort of a litmus test every year after we have the council retreats. The council tells us what their next moves are, whether it's water, sewer, police, fire, whatever it is. I want to know what those are, and I want to know in a performance review from my elected officials how we're doing. And if we're not doing well, I want to find out why. I'll sit down with individual council members. I'll sit down with them as a whole in executive session. I'll talk to constituents of theirs that have problems with what's going on with different things to try and solve it. And in addition to that, my contract actually has a 90-day cooling off period in it. So let's say there's one council member that has a problem with what's going on in the city based on what those objectives were that were set by the city council. They can sit down with me and say, all right, Brian, we've got this problem and we need it fixed. And it's April 1st and we want it fixed by July 1st. So contract can be written a variety of different ways, but the objective of the contract really is to not only protect the city manager in terms of there's some issues that may be an issue there, but they also protect the city. If I'm convicted of a felony or something like that, automatically I'm gone. If after that 90 days I haven't fixed what's the matter, they can ask me to go. Some of them have severance contracts in them, and those are important. The reason why they're important is because you want to make sure that you get a city manager that never puts a decision that's made before their job. That may sound strange, but when you work for 7 people, you've got 7 different opinions, and obviously a majority rules. If my council has 4 people of the 7 that are in it, and then 4 of them decide they want me to go, it may not have had any bearing on my performance, but it certainly has bearing on whether or not there's politics in the situation. And you should, if you want a good manager, you have to give them that security. And it also provides security for the city because it outlines exactly what's expected of the manager should some problems like that arise.
Yes, mine also has a performance review every year, and feels the same way that if there is something wrong or if I'm not performing the way they think that I should, we do the same thing. I want to know that so that it can be corrected. No outside employment on mine also.
Yeah, I think one of the key elements is to have a performance evaluation. It maintains that the council and the manager are working collaboratively to understand that they're on the same page. The priorities of the council are the priorities of the manager. He takes the direction from the council. So there needs to be that communication at least on an annual basis to ensure that those progresses and those benchmarks are being made and what those achievement goals are. In my previous contracts, I did have an annual evaluation, and I did have a caveat that I was able to teach class, but it was either at the university or high school to be able to give back to an education side, and that was the only outside employment that I was able to do, but it was under the guise of approval of the council that I was able to do that.